All right, so Nico, let's go ahead and get started. You've got some images to share with us, and we're going to start talking about your photography.
Yes. So thank you, Rodney, for the introduction, and thank you everyone for joining. I am a photographer. I'm also a college professor. I've hosted many a Zoom class and lecture, and have participated on many of them. And so yeah, Rodney and I met at the War Memorial Museum, and I'm just sharing my screen here. Let's see if I can put this
Looks
on
good.
full screen. And this is a video of kind of what this space, this environment looked like as as I hung up all the pieces. And it's 40 seconds. It's in this amazing building.
What building is that? I'm
So this is
sorry.
the War Memorial building. This is across the street from City Hall at on Van Ness. And this is what's called the trophy room. And I was just fortunate enough to just going to show it one more time while I'm talking. To find this place, I worked with a grad student at USF who did museum studies. She was a she's a veteran, and she had access to the War Memorial trophy room. And I have some other kind of still images to kind of share this space. And for me, kind of the bridge became a really special subject. It's the most photographed object on the Western seaboard. It has many other kind of details that I'll talk about in a little bit. But the whole journey of the bridge really started when when I was traveling over the bridge. I'm just going to see if I can. So here are some more images. So this is so I was traveling over the bridge and taking photographs of the bridge while driving. And the first one I actually did myself while driving. I do not recommend that for anyone to do that. And so there's this story that's unfolds, but we'll start with the end. And so this is when the first day when I walked in with my family, and here you can see the desk, and I pasted these photographs in Photoshop to kind of pre-visualize the space, to really think about the space and work with the space itself, because it felt like it was a very unique opportunity to have these images, not just in any kind of gallery, but in a real sacred space that belongs to veterans. I'm an immigrant. I come from the Netherlands, where I lived for 32 years, and I spent the next 32 years in pretty much in the Bay Area. And welcome, Sherry. And so here are some photographs of kind of the scale of it, right? The prints were 4 by 6 feet. It took a lot of work to get all this work up. This is printed on silk, uh, 10 feet by 6 or something, and we treated the window so it could actually be seen from the inside as well as from the outside. This is kind of this is City Hall that is across the street. Here is my curator. Um, and so there's a lot of problems to solve besides taking photographs when you are putting a show like this together. Like, how do I hang the work? Because you were not allowed to put any nails in this beautiful stone that they have there. So I figured out a system with with magnets, actually very strong magnets, and some tape. And we had a great opening party. Um, this guitar player played the national anthem for us, Jimi Hendrix style, while he was entertaining the rest. We had food donated. We had a huge turnout of people. I also kind of had smaller groups of people coming, people that I invited. I kept making new photographs of the bridge because I always thought, I'm done taking photographs of the bridge. I'm already done. He was a little bit of a close-up. And then here in these areas, I have information about suicide, because the bridge is also in the world, it's the one place that people seek out to end their lives. And as I was photographing and as I was researching and peeling away the layers of my subject, that really started to speak to me. I have my mental health issues. I have my learning disabilities. I'm just like anyone else. I've learned to freely share those with my students because it has risen to the surface. And this is a forum that we had that addressed kind of the photography. The exhibit became a vehicle to address mental health issues. And it was really me listening to the bridge, to my subject, instead of it photographing it like what most tourists do and most artists. And it's been well documented. The way that I photographed it is I started questioning after years of photography and doing some painting and graphic design, kind of what a still image is, and that there's nothing still in our lives. And so as I was starting to listen to the bridge and listen to my photographs, the bridge started to actually talk to me, and I could feel kind of this other component that attracts other people. And that became a very important signifier, so to speak, for this whole show. First of all, it wasn't in a gallery, in a museum. It was in this beautiful sacred space, where there's actually that tomb you see. There's earth from a grave from World War I. There's memorabilia of World War II. So it all kind of started coming together. This is kind of the last photographs, because at the end of that forum, we had a sound healing, and we did some meditation. So the bridge to me became much more than this, powerful construction that we have that connects. And as I was photographing, and here we can see in this photograph, you can see the net being constructed. The curator and we tried to reach out to the people and organizations that actually help individuals in crisis, whether they're there in immediate crisis or when they're just at home in crisis. And so here we have a picture of the net. And since they didn't really want to draw attention to the fact that the net wasn't completed, we didn't really have the ability to build a relationship. But as I said earlier, in these cases, there was, and here we can't see it, but in these cases, there definitely was information about that, which I thought was extremely important. More important than Nico van Dongen, the photographer that did this really funky, different visualization of the bridge, but much more about what the bridge means to so many others.
So your photographs kind of sparked this dialogue that touched on the tragic aspects. I mean, the bridge is seen by many people as a symbol of America. It's almost like the Statue of Liberty of the West Coast. but then it has this other side to it. And then, you know, you're in the Veterans Building, which was built to memorialize World War I veterans, but I think symbolizes the sacrifices of all veterans. So when you first started doing these images, did that kind of context occur to you, or is that something that came later?
Yeah, that's something that came later. And in preparation of this um, let me see if I still have it. So yeah, can you see this screen? So years ago, I came back on an evening driving over the Bay Bridge, and I took this photograph. I put the little camera on my steering wheel and I took this photograph. And it was, you know, maybe a dozen images. And so I really started thinking about that image, and I thinking about my journeys, and also think about especially my journeys over the Golden Gate Bridge. Again, I'm an immigrant. I had a Saab convertible, and I would drive over the bridge, and even, you know, in the station wagon with my family, I always would get that feeling: San Francisco is my home. I'm living here. I got it made. This is the most amazing experience. I'm driving over our bridge, right? I feel this deep connection. And what was your question?
Was more like, yeah, were you surprised by the reaction that people had to the photographs?
Oh yes. No, because it as I mentioned, like as I'm sitting and processing these images in silence, I these images came about because I was peeling away the layers of a still image. And I did a lot of research on other artists that had done things like that in painting, in sculpting. You know, if you look at Frank Stella, if you look at Marcel Duchamp's Woman Descending Staircase, some classic examples of capturing motion in a two-dimensional image. And then there are contemporaries. There's a Pep Ventosa, who is, I think, a local Spanish San Franciscan residing here photographer that did that. There is Idris Khan, who did a lot of stuff with text. So I'm not the only person that is peeling away these layers. But the research and the technicality of it, and then figuring out how to do this, when that settled in, it really, then these images started to speak to me and call to me. And during the opening, people actually came to me and thanked me because they knew of someone. And I think, Rodney, when you and I were talking, there was this person that said, I stood on a ledge and I identify with the message that is being represented here. And and I'm just humbled that the gods of creation kind of gave me the power, so to speak, to present something meaningful instead of something that is just about pretty images. Like,
Yeah.
So
It's like an entry point to, we are confronted, I mean, especially in San Francisco, we're confronted with all this tragedy on our streets. And it's really easy to look away. And it makes sense that it would be photographers who tell us, who show us a way not to look away, to really think about it. I mean, the other example for the bridge was the documentary film, The Bridge, which was about mental health and suicide, and just a really, really hard but important to watch film. But it's
yeah, and I was thinking about the people, right? The people that that can talk someone down or up from the bridge. And there is a few months ago, one of the newspapers here had an article about a photographer who shoots with film. He's on the bridge every day, and he's been documenting the bridge in his specific way. And he also talked about that he has seen this, and he had interactions with people and helped them. And I think that, why do we make art, right? Why do I make art? And it's taken me. And we do art because we want to answer questions that we have, and we want to share those answers. At least that's how I feel about it. And as we get older, and as we get more insights and more experiences, and also with the whole pandemic, kind of what we've been through, and me seeing in my constituents, my students that are in their 20s that have lived through a very difficult time and a very important time, um, mental health and general sense of happiness has become very important, and it's okay to have mental health issues, and it's important for all of us to share them um, freely, because it's healing. It should be. I make it a very, very important point when I meet my classes that I have learning disabilities and I have mental health. I have had mental health issues, depression, and it goes hand in hand with being creative, goes hand in hand with being a sensitive member of our society. So being able to provide a venue where again I had interactions with people that were able to share their feelings. Like I had someone that was really close to me at the opening and said, "Wow, thank you so much. I've had suicidal thoughts." And I thought, you out of all people? I didn't say that, but it surprised me what it brought out in people, just with me sharing it with me. So
Yeah, and it's interesting because like a lot of people think, well, art's all about like beauty, right? And it's that's part of it, but also art is about changing people. Like I always feel, even with the things I do, I don't want people to be the same at the end of, say, a program like this. I want you to see things a little differently. I want you to feel, it might be a very subtle thing, but I think so many images of the Golden Gate Bridge are just beautiful. What a beautiful bridge. What a magnificent structure. What a great engineering marvel it is. What do you think it is about the fact that you have these repeating images? And maybe we can put another one of these bridge images up as we talk about this. But what is it about the repeating images that makes, in my opinion, it's a very disquieting view of the bridge? What do you think it is that makes that our reaction?
well, again, and I'll share some other images with you. Um, if I can find it, Chrome. So here is a little bit of my history, right? So this is my thesis, where I worked with a makeup artist, and I did the art direction, I did all the photography. This is all studio work, and this is kind of where you see my Irving Penn kind of relationship, where we wanted to unify kind of two worlds. So this is all still classic, still photography, really me showing off kind of composition and light and dealing with subject matter, collaborating. Here are some portraits, also kind of very technical, but definitely inspired by other photographers. And then this, so it was one of these harvest moons, like many, many, many years ago, like 10, 12 years ago, maybe. And I was in Lake Tahoe, and I go, like, well, I'm going to photograph this moon. And little did I know, I brought the wrong equipment, I brought the wrong gears, and I go, well, I'm just going to leave my camera at these settings. I'm just going to wave kind of my way through this evening where the moon was somewhere, but it wasn't really visible. And so I got these really interesting images. And then this is kind of another theme that I do is photographing reflections, turning them upside down. And so here is another kind of me looking for a different way to photograph Yosemite, to photograph, this is Half Dome. And I go like, well, what am I going to do in Yosemite, right? Like my Weston was there, Ansel Adams was there. Like, who am I to even approach photographing Yosemite Valley? And I started walking by the river, and I found Half Dome reflected in the river to kind of create an I don't want to call it an effect, but just an other way of looking. These reflection images, these reflection images, this is a structured College of San Mateo, came from the philosophy of something that the Incas or the Mayans did when they were observing the galaxies and the movement of the stars. They wouldn't look up, they would look down. They had these basins that were black, that were filled with water, and it was almost like a screen, and they could observe the movement of the stars. And I thought it was brilliant when I heard that, and I go like, well, why look up when you can look down and you can see more? And so that's a little bit of this premise. So it's evolved, right? So here, and you see the little
Stones. Yeah.
thing that and then the little ripples, little thing that I threw in the water to kind of show that there is a little bit of water. And then about 11 years ago, I had an opportunity to do a show, a first solo show, and I thought, well, maybe I'll recycle some of the old work. And I go, no, I'm going to create something completely new. And over a period of 3 months, I shot about 12,000 images of tulips. And these are all done with natural light, southern exposure that sometimes was filtered very soft and sometimes filtered very hard. And I was looking at these tulips, and the series is called Tulipa Erotica. Like, why is a tulip a tulip? Why is an apple? And kind of trying to find the sensual beauty in something that is, a couple of inches high, wide or high. And so all kind of, still images. And so that's a little bit the last 12 years. And, always been very interested in textures, in looking kind of deep at my subject, kind of like an abstraction, looking beyond, right?
Oh.
And so going from really small things, and again, Irving Penn did all his stuff in white. I did do all my stuff in dark because there's a dark side to me. And then I went from photographing really small things into photographing the largest organic thing that I could find. And that was the trees in Golden Gate Park. And so Concerning Trees is a series. And this is where I started, and I'll zoom in a little bit. And this is really when I started to exploring some of the tonalists, I looked a lot of Pissarro's paintings where it's more this impression using a camera to capture my images and to create this softness. When we take a photograph now with a cell phone, the phone makes it makes it sharp and bright and everything. And I really think that the colors of nature are more nuanced. They're softer. And this is in Golden Gate Park. I watched this horse for many years. I see a horse here. It's just some
Yeah.
vines growing, and it just disappeared 2 years ago. So
Oh.
it's no longer there. And photography also became an exploration in looking, right, and in searching for these things.
I want to ask you a question about that, Nico. So
Yes.
you saw a horse, and a lot of us will do that. We'll walk around and we'll see clouds, and we'll see something that evokes something for us. But how did you like? What was the challenge of turning it into a photograph? How do you get your camera to see the same thing your eyes saw? I guess is my question.
Yeah. So that's a really good question. And I think that the way that I was able to accomplish that gradually is letting go of everything I knew about photography. I studied photography, right? I did commercial photography for many years in a studio. Um, and and I became lighter about my subject, and so I became lighter about the rules. And then at a certain point, I gradually again, like there's less rules, there are no rules, and looking more at painters and other artists and how they would solve their problems visually, and I kind of knew that that I wanted it to look and feel a certain way, and a lot has to do with kind of softness that I see and feel, because when you walk somewhere, it's also very auditory instead of just what you see. And you can walk through a forest and you have all these different, you know, reflections of sound as well as light. So um, it's a little bit of magic too when you let go of some of the conventions. There's something really magical that happens that you really don't feel you have control over, and that's, I think, where the interesting tension is. It led me to go paint with oils, and it's probably one of the hardest things that I've ever done. And but it taught me a lot about color in photography. When I had my painting mentor, after I showed my first paintings, he goes, "You have no idea about color, Nico." I go, "What?" And then I really started looking at painters and how they use color, and how I can use my photography to be more like a painter, to paint with light. So, um, and I'm a huge Tolkien fan. I walk through the Panhandle here, and I say hello to trees, and I think trees say hello back to me, um, because they are different every day. They're not just different throughout the seasons, and and trees communicate, right? It's scientifically proven that trees communicate with one another, and trees communicate to me because I listen. And and right, this is in Golden Gate Park. This is the Shakespeare Garden.
Wow.
And then you get this little gift of this girl sitting there reading a book, and she stayed there for as long as I was photographing.
So is this like
uh
you've got a very long shutter speed? Is that part
no,
of?
it's like 30 images stacked on top of each other,
Okay.
right? So you don't really, yeah, the screen doesn't really do justice to the images. But this is like 20 images sitting on
Uh,
top of each other. The famous
so
Janis Joplin tree.
Yeah, I know about that, being a Haight-Ashbury tour guide.
right?
Hippie Hill.
Happy Hill. So and then I made hundreds of these, and for the bridge I made like 128 to find 8 great images.
Okay.
So
And then are you using it? I mean, I usually don't ask a lot of technical questions, but I am really intrigued by the how of these images. Would these be multiple images taken from a tripod, so it's exactly the same location?
no,
Is that
that's a really good point. It's not, and I've been thinking about how, like, you want to use one of these gimbals, but in terms of letting go of everything that I know and all the rules, the beauty about this, Rodney, and my dear audience, is I can leave things to chance. And the more I leave things to chance, the more magic is going to happen. The more I try to control things, that's just not as exciting. Like, I walked around this whole spire. I did a 360 around it. And there's another one where there's a crow that sat on it the whole time. Um, and you have to kind of fight your way around this thing. And yeah, so I leave things to chance as much as possible. And I do that while I'm taking the photographs, and I'm doing that while I'm processing the photographs. Because sometimes it takes very little work, and sometimes it takes a ton of work and vision to make them the way that I want. So this was before I did the bridges, and so I'm a dolphin. I swim in the bay, and then this is kind of the view from our club. And so here I have the Belkutha, the boat here, and then so this image took a lot of time to kind of make it a little bit. I always say this is like Turner meets Vermeer, right? So this is kind of more the Vermeer side of things, and this is more the Turner side of things. This is a jump, a swimming from Alcatraz. There's lots of canoes. I don't care what I shoot with. I shot this with my phone. I have multiple cameras, some really expensive ones, some inexpensive ones. I shot this with a cheap camera.
in those Golden Gate Bridge pictures? I think wasn't the original one that sparked the whole thing. That was not with a fancy camera, right?
Yeah, the original one was with a little digital camera that we bought on our vacation because we lost our film camera. Like 120 thing is probably 15 years old. It still works. And yeah, the first image that I took on a way home, talking about magic. So I put this camera on my steering wheel and I take these photographs. I come home. I put the SD disk in my computer. I load the images up into Lightroom. I export them into Photoshop. I have all these layers, and I immediately knew that this was something that I needed to develop, and that it would have potential. Like it was a little magic. So
I do want to call out, we have some comments in chat that, very
yes.
positive reactions to your images that you're showing us. Paco says of the trees that makes him really think about Golden Gate Park, which of course you live right next to Golden Gate Park. So that makes sense. Sarah says she thought, I think there was the ships on the bay, very beautiful. Paco says, I'm really so intrigued by the background of the Coit Tower in downtown San Francisco. And it just occurs to me, like, we were talking about how your bridge photographs relate to the the well-known ones that we see all the time, which you have to say, like, most of these are very cliche. Most of those are very cliched images. And you are taking things that are very well known and showing it to us in very different ways. So it just seemed like to me like there's a very original vision in the way you're presenting these things to us. So I guess my question relating to that is, how long does it take to kind of, I guess you have to be very patient, right? Wait for these new techniques to come to you. Or are you kind of always looking for like a new way of showing things?
I I have a son who's in art school right now, and as he was going through his art school trials and tribulations, I said to him, "All you have to be is you. Like, very simple. You just have to be you." And I tell my students that I teach design, that want to learn design, that they have to be their authentic selves. And I think being authentic, um, is something that the universe wants from us, because there's only one of me and there's only one of you, Rodney, and there's only one of any of our guests in the room. And it is very difficult to be authentic and to find this one thing that makes you tick, that makes you want to get out of bed in the morning. And another thing that I tell my students is, don't wait as long as I waited, because we all want to conform, we all want to make people happy, we want to make our partners happy, we want to make our clients happy. If you don't do something for yourself, and especially when it's art related, then why are you doing it, right? It still excites me. It still excites me to do this work, and it's not like, paint by numbers. And it has taken me till my mid-50s to really find the confidence to let go of the rules and to follow through on what I see and how I want to portray what I see. Somebody told me a long time ago, "You think, Nico, that everybody looks at the world the way you do. That's not true." And it took me till I was in my mid-50s to really understand what that meant. And practicing the muscle, right? The eye has to learn to listen before it can see. I use that over and over again. It's from some photographer in Portland, I believe. And I was painting something, and I was done, and my hand just moves to the area where the next paint needed to go, and I go like, "Oh, that's what that means. Now my eye is listening." And a lot of this is about surrender, and is about trusting the universe, trusting the universe in making the work, and trusting the universe to get the right venue. Me running into you is that would not have happened, and now I have this wonderful audience, that I can share my view of not only art, but my view of life, and what art means to me, and what I hope it can mean to others, making the world a little bit better. And if we do that by being a nurse or a firefighter or an artist, as long as you put your time in, then we're all gonna have a better world.
I think the thing you said that I think really jumps out at me is that we realizing that we all see things differently, and as like really photography wouldn't be an important art if we did all see things the same way. And so what the photographer does is show us, we all live in the same world, but shows us a different way of seeing our world. And I like the bridge photographs and these other photographs you showed us are examples of that. I think the hard thing for a lot of us, since we all walk around with cameras all the time now, is figuring out how to be authentic and how to really trust our vision. And I imagine it's something that takes a lot of practice to get the confidence to say, okay, I have now established my vision. So do you have advice for, you've got students they want to be photographers, but for the rest of us who just want to, maybe, we want to share some aspects of what we see. Is there advice you can give, a lay audience on how to pursue photography?
Yeah. We are all born creative geniuses. Actually, we're all born geniuses. And in preschool, when you give a child a huge sheet of paper and a brush and three colors, they go to town. They don't think about, oh, maybe I shouldn't do this, or maybe somebody else can do it better than me, or I don't like these colors. They just go to town. And the older we get, the more stifled we become in expressing ourselves. I've heard so many times, I can only draw stick figures. Well, then that's your superpower. You can draw stick figures. I think it was Picasso that said that it took him 30 years to draw like Michelangelo, and it took him the rest of his life to draw like a 3-year-old. And I saw Picasso's very last painting at a show in Paris in the 70s. And it is just like a 3-year-old would draw Picasso. And so maybe this is another journey. This is another phase for me, because I'm definitely not done yet. I'm working on my next project. I'm deep into it. And I think that to answer your question and to think of my next project, I'm doing something with currency, with the American dollar. And then I show it to people and they go, oh, wow, what is this? They go like, well, that's from the money that you used to use all the time. I didn't know that was on it. I didn't know, because we only look at, I came to America and all the currency looked the same, because I
Yes.
didn't know all these
It's all the same
people.
color. Yeah.
It's all the same color. And so what happens if you
white
take
men?
away
Yeah.
what happens if you take away the portraits of all these white dudes, right? And then what else do you see? So it's not so much, I think art is more about being observant where you are than anything else. I was teaching a class a couple of years ago, and it was a summer class, and where a bunch of high school students were in there. And at the end of the class, I always ask, well, what did you really learn? What did you really learn from me? And this one 14-year-old said, Professor, what I learned is I can look at something and go, that's a nice photograph. And I go, if you can do that, then, you're truly seeing something. And then when you have your camera and you know all the technicalities, how to capture it, that's a whole other story. But first you have to see it. And then you can, who's looking at my stained glass window?
Yeah, well, you have there's a tulip, and the thing about the tulips that intrigued me, of course, is that you're Dutch, and we had the Dutch tulip mania, right? So I don't know if there's a connection. You obviously have some affinity for flowers, right?
I have a house full of tulips right now because it was my birthday Saturday.
Oh, Happy
and
birthday, Nico.
I have a house full of tulips. Yeah, and you know, and the tulips, the reference here, Marcia. Um, we moved into this house 25 years ago, and the person that owned this home made all this stained glass. And every time when I walk up the stairs and I walk into, and my wife the same thing, like we are so fortunate to have this. And has this inspired me? Definitely, I think. And I worked at a school. I think I have a few more minutes. I worked at a
Mhm.
school, an art school, and they had to close their doors. And I got a call from one of the old faculty members I had left already, and he said, "Nico, they're giving away all the books from the library." And I said, "Okay, go find the Irving Penn flower book, put it aside for me, and I'll come and see what else there is when I have time next week to come." Yeah, it's an affinity with and it's the affinity with questioning, like, why is a tulip a tulip? You know, why is a tree a tree? Why do we have seasons? You know, what is it about the bridge that speaks to me? And what is it about still photography? And because we're always in motion, and how can I address these? I can, right, reconciliate the opposites, so to speak, of these two completely what we see as foreign entities, but they're everything is connected. Everything is connected, and 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 I believe that we all see what I see, and that I can see what others see if I'm curious enough and able to let go of my conventions.
The photography is a way of sharing vision, literally sharing vision.
Yes.
I'm a big fan of Lee Friedlander, and I have a story. I just love this story about he had there was an exhibition in New York City, and there was a photograph, and it just said San Francisco, and I was just looking at it and looking at it, and I was trying to figure out like what the building was, and was it a building I was familiar with? And I spent like 10-15 minutes looking at this thing, and I kept walking away and going back to it, and eventually I figured out that it was a photograph of the building in which I worked, and it was shot in such a way that it just like was so from such a different angle. Just it just took me a really long time to figure that out, and it was so much fun to realize, oh yeah, there's a very different way of seeing the world. I think I know. So,
Yes.
so Nico, how do we see more of your work? How do we get to see some of your photographs, perhaps in person sometime? Since the exhibition we're talking about unfortunately closed a couple months ago.
Yes.
What do we have to look
Well,
forward to?
there's definitely one of the photographs is going to be up for auction, because I always donate to UCSF's AIDS Alliance project. It's called Art for AIDS. It's a show that uh, showcases art from local artists and from some very well-known artists, and we raise money to provide mental health services for people with AIDS and HIV. I've been doing that I'm on the jury. I'm doing that for about 15 years. There's my website, nicovandongen.com.
I'll put that in the chat.
Here, .com, where you can see my work. I'm not on Instagram. I'm on LinkedIn, um, because I'm not on social media. Um, and I'm working on a new project, and I hope that that is also going to be a show at some point.
Well, a lot of the people that have joined this are on my email list, and I send an email every Friday. If you have something coming up, Nico, please let me know. I will publicize that to my group of followers, and
Absolutely.
I would love to see more of your stuff. And if you're going back to see Irving Penn at the De Young again, I would love to look at that with you. I was also really blown away by that exhibition. really
Yes,
fun one.
yes, and actually, when are you back in town?
Oh, I get back on Thursday.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. Well,
I'm in
let's
Los
connect.
Angeles right
Maybe
now.
we
Yeah.
get a small group of people together. I people that I've toured the exhibit with are really they've said I really opened their eyes to his art and therefore their own art. So I'm a professor as well, and I'm all about learning and sharing. So
Yeah, what impressed me about him, and I think it impresses me about you too, is that he had a lot of range. He's doing portraits, but he's also like doing these enormous pictures of cigarettes and flowers, and he's got, I thought, for me, some very interesting nudes. He had some still lifes, so I always love it when someone has a lot of range. And
yeah, the
for
story
you,
about the cigarette butts is he's asking his students, his interns and his students, he says, I want you to go into the streets of New York and find interesting things for me to photograph. And so they come and bring interesting things. And then he says, no, I don't want interesting things. I want things that we can make interesting. And so that's where the cup and the glove and the Camel cigarettes, that's where they all came from. Yeah, it's fascinating. It's a technical tour de force and a creative tour de force. And I'll go and see this work many more times before it's going on to the next museum.
well, in wooden the cigarettes. This is me. I know Nikki's. We're going to need to wrap up. But a thought is that those cigarettes, that idea, like we're going to take something and make it interesting, is very much like what you do, right? You take these landmarks that we're very familiar with, and you show them to us in new ways. And I'm really grateful to you for coming on the program and talking to us about this. I hope it seems like there was a very positive reaction from folks in the audience. So thanks everyone for tuning in. Any last thoughts, Nico, before we wrap up?
No, thank you so much for inviting me, Rodney, and thank you so much, everyone, for spending an hour today with us. And I'm honored. It's a real honor to be part of this venue, and I'm looking forward, kind of, to some other ways to interact.
Yeah, well, thank you, Nico.